Good afternoon, colleagues. I hope that you all are well. I just would like, would you be able to please indicate if everyone is able to hear me clearly, please?
We can hear you from our
Okay,
side, Dr. Lorenzo.
okay, perfect. Thank you. Just going to stop sharing. Hey, so once again, good afternoon, colleagues. I hope that you all are well. We'd like to welcome you to this workshop, which is being hosted by the Research Capacity Development Unit in collaboration with the Department of Educational Psychology at the University of Johannesburg and Salt Lake University. We are very excited to have you join us today for today's session, which is titled Crafting an Approvable Research Proposal. So my name is Lorenzo David, and I will be your moderator for today's session. Firstly, I would like to express my gratitude to each of you for taking the time to participate. And at the same time, we'd like to thank our facilitators for taking the time to put together their presentations. So before we get to introduce our esteemed panel of facilitators for today's session, I would just like to go through some house rules for the session. If you have any questions during the presentation, uh, please feel free to either raise your hand or to speak. Alternatively, you can type your question into the chat box, and I will ensure that the presenter addresses your query. Just to add to this, we have spoken with Dr. Mabaso, and who's indicated that there will be a Q&A session at the end of each presentation, following the presentation by each speaker. So if we can also hold, if you'd like to hold your questions until then, I think that would work out quite well. Please also note that the session is being recorded and the presentation slides will be provided by the presenter. Both the recording and the slides will be uploaded to our respective Moodle communities by the end of the week. Additionally, during this session, you will receive a feedback survey in the chat, and we kindly ask that you please fill it out to help us assess the workshop's value and provide suggestions for improvement. Additionally, please take a moment to share your appreciation for our facilitators' efforts. The feedback survey will also contribute to our facilitate as well as RCD reporting. By completing the survey, you will ensure that you will receive a certificate of attendance, and this will be delivered through our RCD management system. So once again, I'd like to thank you for being here, and we look forward to a productive session. Before I hand over to Dr. Mabaso, I'd just like to quickly go through the bios of our three esteemed presenters for today. So the first presenter will be Prof. Safotu. So Maximus Safotu is a full professor in the Department of Educational Psychology at the University of Johannesburg. Prof. Safotu is the director of the Center for Neurodiversity at the University of Johannesburg, focused on creating awareness about neurodiversity throughout the African continent. In April 2025, Prof. Safotu was instrumental in the establishment of the African Association for Neurodiversity and African Journal of Neurodiversity. Prof. Safotu makes a clarion call of Africa Tosha. Africa Awakens and the address the challenges of neurodiversity in Africa from African perspectives. Prof. Safotu undertook an awareness creation trip to the University of Nigeria in Osaka. Our second facilitator for today is Prof. Malindi. So Prof. Malindi is an associate professor in the Department of Educational Psychology at the University of Johannesburg. His research focuses on the resilience of children and youth at risk of poor developmental outcomes, such as teenage mothers, pregnant school-going learners, learners living with disabilities, learners who live and work on the streets, learners from child-headed household, substance abusing learners, and orphans. Apart from supervising postgraduate students, he has published articles in peer-reviewed journals, contributed chapters in edited books, and participated in funded national and international research projects. He has served as a guest editor for 2 academic journals and is currently serving on the editorial boards of 2 international journals. Our final presenter for today is going to be Professor Dwarika. Professor Dwarika is a registered educational psychologist who works within a social constructivist framework. recognizing the interdependence of social and individual processes in the co-construction of knowledge. Her teaching philosophy blends traditional and innovative approaches, drawing on students' prior knowledge and abilities to engage them in critically examining the world around them. Prof. Dwarika's research interests focus on trauma and resilience, school violence, and positive behavior support, as well as therapeutic interventions for children, parents, and communities. In addition, Prof. Dwarika is actively involved in community projects that enhance psychological therapy and support in disadvantaged areas. And she provides clinical supervision for student educational psychologists across various schools and community settings. So as we can see, colleagues, we have a very esteemed panel. I'm looking forward to this webinar. With that, I would like to hand over to Dr. Mabaso. If you would, I think you have a few words to say, Doc. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lorenzo. And just to echo your words, I would like to greet the colleagues and welcome them. It gives me great joy to welcome you all to today's webinar hosted by the Department of Educational Psychology in collaboration with Seoul Park University and Research Capacity Development. Our theme, Crafting Approvable Research Proposals, speaks to the heart of academic growth, excellence, um, and I'm delighted to see such diverse group of participants. I'm looking at the attendees list and I'm seeing a diverse group of participants who are gathered here today. So in this space, we are privileged to have seasoned supervisors who bring a wealth of experience and wisdom alongside novice or emerging research supervisors who bring fresh energy, curiosity, and determination, and this combination makes today's gathering especially meaningful, like a community of practice where knowledge flows both ways. Research supervision is not about producing approvable proposals. It is about nurturing confidence, sharpening critical thinking, and empowering the next generation of scholars. So whether you are here to refresh your skills or to gain guidance for the very first time, your presence reflects your commitment in shaping strong, ethical, and impactful research. Right? So I encourage you to engage openly in this session, ask questions, and share your wisdom generously. Remember, this is not a test or a formal evaluation. It is a supportive platform designed to build capacity, strengthen our networks, and celebrate the shared journey of scholarship. So on behalf of the hosts, and presenters, Professors Sifoto, Malindi, and Dwarika, I extend my warmest welcome. Thank you once again for making time to be here today. Together, let us make this session enriching, interactive, and inspiring. Welcome once again, and let us begin. Our first speaker is Professor Max Sifoto. I am now about to hand over to him. If you're ready, Prof. Max.
Thank you kindly, Doctor. Am I able to be loaded up on the slides that are on our folder?
I think it's going to be easier for you to share from your side, Prof, if you can.
All right. Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm sitting far away from you, but I'm hoping that you can all hear me. Am I audible from your side?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, Prof. Max.
But can you see my slides?
Not yet, Prof.
Okay. Just give me a minute so that I see. It looks like, can you give me the, okay. Can you see the slides now?
Yes, Prof. We're able to see your slides.
Thank you.
And now it is in presentable. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, in celebration of 20 years of UJ, we keep on repeating the same message to welcome this many years that the university has been in existence. I will be talking about the section 1 of the process of the research. We could say dissertation or we could say thesis, but this section 1. And then I will talk about the introduction part and the background part and the literature review part. I would like to say that allow me to start by saying these are the parts that we usually in the department look at, and the process that the three of us will be presenting is a process that has been agreed by the department. It is a process that has been sanctioned by our research and researchers in the faculty through the office of Dr. Dwarika. We will be looking at, you'll have to forgive me, my slides are a bit jumpy. I'm not sure why this is the process, but I would like to start here with the title. That the title for us is a précis. A précis is like when you are looking at a holistic picture, but in a miniature way. It's like when you are looking through a hole, but you are seeing the holistic picture of you are talking about. In other words, the title of the study represents the whole study. That is why it becomes important that the title captures the essence of your whole study, as we say, in answer to your research question or the problem, or in answer to the gap that you are addressing. Being in the Department of Educational Psychology, we look at the references in terms of the APA, and there we are told that the title should be less than 12 words, as it were, to capture the main message. So what I always encourage is that once you start crafting your title, you should choose carefully the constructs that will represent the idea that you are having in your mind to study. What do I mean by that? I mean that the constructs or the verbs or the words or the, they should carry a message that you want to communicate with the title of your study. Allow me to say the following, colleagues, that I normally refer to research as like a roller coaster. A roller coaster in that once you start to embark on the journey of research, it is ups, downs, twists and turns, back and forth. That is the kind of picture that I picture the research process with. But along with that, I always have a metaphor of a firm research like building on a swamp, where you are beginning to say to yourself, I need to excavate so that I can lay a foundation, I can have the pillars go down, deep down, until I reach firm ground where now I can start writing the dissertation or the thesis. So what is of importance here regarding the research title is that it provides clarity and focus. It also attracts the audience or the reader, once they look at it, they would want to read the context, the contents inside. But also it established relevance because it does not just fall from the sky, but it is linked with a body of research that has already been conducted. But also the title, remember, it is the first, it forms the first impression. It's like one's way of carrying themselves. Once you see the person, how they comport themselves, you may be attracted to say, I want to be in the presence of this person or not. And also, it increases discoverability to the outside world. Somebody might be sitting in Australia and reading, your work, and those verbs, those words, those constructs that I referred to, if you have chosen them carefully, if you have chosen them with intention, then they allow such a title to be seen now that we are in the era of AI. So the characteristics are that it should predict the content of the dissertation of the thesis. Once I read the title, it should already tell me what to expect in the body of your dissertation or thesis. It should also be, as we say, interesting to the reader. It should reflect the tone of the writing. That's why that attractiveness that we spoke about earlier becomes very important. And it should contain important keywords, I've referred to that, that will make it easier to be located during a keyword search if you're getting into the computer. Now, again, we are saying here that you want to also ensure that that clarity, that interest, that attractiveness, and preferring you to use declarative titles, titles that declare themselves, titles that make noise about themselves, so that once we get there, then we know what is it that we are talking about. Please avoid jargon, ladies and gentlemen. It does not help us. This is an example of my own thesis title. I was looking at the narratives of differently abled persons informing career guidance policy. These constructs, the narratives alone, carries weight. Differently abled persons on itself carries weight. Informing career guidance policy is another level where now when I went through with my research, it gave me the possibility of looking at those even within the literature review. Now we have on the left how to choose a research topic, but because you'll be having access to the slides, I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritties of each. By way of example, the introduction. The introduction to the study states what the study is all about and provides the contexts where, as a researcher, you feature in the study. This is deliberately crafted like this. Most of the time, people want to do research, but when you try to find out how are you related to this research, it may be very remote. And if it's like that, then the question is, how are you going to sustain the momentum going on? Because research is not a once-off, one-day thing. It's a journey that you take with you. So in terms of writing the introduction, we have these paragraphs that we are suggesting that the first paragraph, you are setting the stage. Second one, you are dealing with the what part. What is this study about? So you clearly make what is known or unknown clear to the what you call. You discuss those so that you bring your reader into the context of the story. Look at number one. It's talking about the hook. I call it normally the topic sentence that you use to attract your readers, so that from the word go, they want to go within this journey with you. Paragraph 3 deals with the why part, and then paragraph 4 is where now we try to look at what the research gap is there. And this should lead us into beginning to formulate some kind of questions that we want to ask. And later on, paragraph 5 would be looking at the theoretical, practical contributions and aims and all of that. We have the do's, the don'ts there that says, don't be too vague or generic. You know, we need to choose words that are actionable, words that carry a message, words that provide direction into where the study is going. And it says here, don't overload the introduction with excessive background details. This is a problem and a trap that most of us fall into. We think that introducing means telling the whole story from the beginning. And the question is, the answer is no. That's not supposed to be the case. Be concise, precise, and tell what the study is all about. Now, some tips again. It says provide context and it narrows towards your thesis. Many of us are not, oblivious of the fact that the word thesis actually means you are making a statement. Either you are writing a dissertation or a thesis. Those are just documents. But a thesis is the statement that you are making in relation to the project or the program or the problem that you want to introduce. The introduction must grab your reader's interest in the first few sentences. As I said, even with the title, once they read that first paragraph, you don't want to let them go. You want to grab them so that they continue in this journey with you. And it introduces the relevant information necessary for understanding the scope of your research, the scope of your dissertation. And now, if we are done with the introduction, we get into another section called the background to the study. I encourage not putting the two together, introduction and background, because of the problem that we have seen that most of the time when you mix them up together, it is difficult to distinguish which one is introduction and which one is background. So separating this allows the reader at least to understand that, okay, I'm done with the introduction, let me get into the background. So the background to the study begins to give us the review of the field of the study, current developments in the field, controversies, breakthroughs, previous research, and you are building towards the problem. This is where most of the time we miss it. We don't realize that a research does not happen in a vacuum. A study happens within a context. That's why in the background, if we don't have that context that says what is happening, I normally say, in order to situate your study well within the background, let's use the funnel model. Start broadly at the global level, and then come to the regional level, and then come to the actual context within which the study is taking place. Because the background establishes that context for the research. And this section must explain this particular research topic is important, essential, and understanding the main aspects of the study, but also now trying to summarize it nicely for the reader to understand where this study is taking place. I always make an example that someone is sitting in Alaska. They are reading your study, but you are conducting a study about Mamelodi. They have no idea what Mamelodi is. You need to give them that mind picture. I think there's a confusion. Someone is on at the same time. Can the technical team assist? Someone is talking as I'm talking.
Apologies, Prof. I will mute the participant now.
Thank you. So you are actually giving the mental picture of the context of your study with such clarity that the person really sees it in front of them. So the background, again, as I said, we can look at internationally, nationally, and locally. This is where it is. But it should also lead towards a problem statement, because within that context, that's where you are saying, my study is situated here, but this is where the problem is actually happening. In other words, the background prepares the ground for the problem statement. So the research problem is an area of conflict, concern, or controversy, or a gap that we want to address. And most times, again, this is where we find so many problems. It is difficult to write a clear problem statement. But it says here, the problem statement should include a clear statement that the problem indeed exists. And then it must be supported by evidence that supports the existence of the problem. It's not about the hunch. It's not about how I feel. It's not about only my thoughts, but there has to be evidence that supports the fact that a problem really exists there. So evidence of existing trend, that it has been going on for some time, that then makes it a problem. It's not a once-off thing. But also, we begin to define here some concepts and terms that relate to this particular problem that we are talking about. Then from there, we begin to ask research questions. And normally I would say, let's separate these questions into primary and secondary. I always encourage having a primary research question. This research question says, if this is now the context within which my problem is happening, if this is my problem, what is the research question that I want to ask to respond to that research problem, to respond to that background to my study, to fill those gaps, to fill those controversies? So this is supposed to be supported also by secondary research questions. I always say that, once again, I confine my students to say between 3 and 4 research questions, because here it says 2 to 3. But I say, let's allow a little bit more, so that we are able to say, at the end of the day, we have been able to address those questions once we have been to the field. Sometimes you see 7 to 8 to 11 questions, and you are like, what is this person understanding about this? Because research binds you that you have proposed that you are going to answer all these 7 questions. So let's see how you have answered them. So that's how I normally craft the questions. And these are in response to the following, again, using clear variables, concepts, precise and concise, to the point that the question, once it's asked, the person who is reading it understands it clearly without a problem. Now, again, that logical way of asking the questions, that they follow one another, and then using words that we can say actually have weight, they are concrete. Here it says thing words. You know, these are some of the terms that throw off the reader, and they might not understand what is it that you are talking about. And then this is the example of now how I normally want to encourage my student. You can see here this student, this was a master's, what you call dissertation, just saying the primary research question: how do teachers define their role in creating a trauma-informed school? Fine. Then secondary research questions, you can see there are 3. What are teachers' understanding of trauma-informed care? How are teachers implementing? You see, this gives a person at least an idea to understand that it is as clear as this. Now, colleagues, I'm not sure how I'm doing on time, Please, Dr. Mabaso, inform me as I go because I'm not seeing behind the screen. So now I always encourage formulating research aims and objectives to help us respond to the main research question and to the secondary research question. The logic behind here is that if you have an aim before the questions and answers, what are you actually talking about? Excuse me a little bit. Karen, please. Sorry, colleagues. Now, here, the formulation of the aim and the objectives allows us the space to say we are addressing that research problem, but we have the aim that is aiming at how do we address the research question, how do we address the research problem, and the aim, the objectives that can help us. I normally juxtapose them such that they allow us the space to be able to work in a way that it's not making us lose the trend of why we are conducting the study. And then from there, we move to literature review. Another very important area, colleagues, where now I always say literature review is a theoretical argument that you make in answer to your research problem, your research questions and aims and objectives. This is why it is so extensive, because it allows us to make that theoretical argument to say, if I have said my research question is this, then theoretically I am purporting that the answer to the question is the following. So that when we get to Prof. Malindi now talking about methodology, it's about now using those methods to answer to this. But unfortunately, it's an area that is, again, a bit complex. Let's have that introduction to the literature chapter. What is this chapter about? Let's also have literature review that is subsumed, supported by either theoretical, conceptual. It depends, again, how we want to do this. But we have to write it such that we realize that we are making an argument. And what this argument could be would be in such a way that it says to us, the argument that we are making is this. So the subheadings, the headings and the subheadings must relate a story, must relate that thesis that you want to write, such that it becomes a way that we follow until the next step. And if we look at what is happening here, it says the importance of literature review. I have summarized it for myself as the importance of literature review as that theoretical argument that you make. However, the slides will be shared so that I don't need to go through these nitty-gritties here. However, I think what is important is in this structure that we always have to have in mind. You know, you read sometimes the first sentence, and the first sentence is not even introducing the literature review. It's something that is all over the place. But look at the right, where the structure of the literature review, yes, broad as it is, but it must take us to a conclusion of this chapter in a way that we have started somewhere globally and then regionally and then locally, as it were, with the same argument, because that literature review says what has been happening in this field that you are researching. What are the controversies? What are the contribution? Everything that has to do with it. So this is now in a way that we could want to structure it. But what is important for me are these review families that we normally take for granted, or we don't even visit, because for us, literature review, you just write. But no, there are types of literature review. Normally, we would do the so-called traditional reviews, and this is where people just start writing, and without mainly giving it a bit of a structure to say, if I'm writing this particular type of review? What type am I writing and why? And this links back again to the title of your study, and it will link forward again to the methodology as it is, as we will listen to how Dr. Malindi, Prof. Malindi presents it. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, for me, this would be how far I would want to go with this. And later on, I will welcome the questions if they are. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you so much, Prof. Max, for your presentation, which was done with so much passion. Thank you so much. I think we will. I saw a couple of comments and questions in the chat box, but we will leave those for later, as we hand over to Prof. Malindi to take us through the research methodology, as in how do we then go about conducting our studies. Thank you once again, Prof. Max, and over to you, Prof. Malindi. Are you able to come through, Prof. Malindi? Prof. Malindi, are you able to come through?
Dr. Mawaso, I think there may be some network issues here.
Okay, in the interim, I think we can attend to the Q&A session for Prof. Max. Is that okay, Prof. Max?
That will be very helpful, Doctor.
Right, thank you so much. We will just keep checking on Prof. Malindi. There is a comment by Dr. Munongi, thanking Prof. Sifoto for the presentation thus far. And she's asking about the minimum, the recommended minimum. And I think I would invite Dr. Lucia to come through, because I don't think we are seeing the rest of your message. Dr. Munongi, do you want to come through? Dr. Munongi?
Dr. Mawaso, I have enabled the mics for all attendees, so they should be able to just unmute and speak. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Lorenzo.
Oh, yes.
Dr.
Thank you so
Munongi.
much. Thank you so much. So sorry, I had already typed that the mic is not active, but now it's active. Thank you so much, Prof. Sifoto. It's always good to listen to you because you always learn something from Prof. Sifoto. So so yeah, I was listening and following when you were talking about the research questions, and you mentioned that sometimes you find someone having 8 or so research questions, and that means the student is bound to answer all those research questions in their study. So I was just wondering if there is a recommended number, maybe minimum and maximum for master's full dissertations and PhD as well. Thank you so much. And I don't know if you can also include, suppose student at PhD or even at master's is doing mixed method study versus using just one method of data collection. Thank you so much.
Okay. Doc, if you allow me to respond to that one. No, there's no recommended number. It is only my sense of being pragmatic to say, if I'm asking 7 to 11 questions, am I going to be able to actually respond to those 7 to 11 questions? Other than if I say I have one main question and then I have 3 secondary questions. At least when I come back from the field, I'm able to reflect back and say, yes, indeed, I have done that. We know the schlep of having to go to the field to collect data, to come back, analyze, and all of that. We do that all in the effort of responding to our research questions. And that must be demonstrable that research has actually taken place. Otherwise, it would be just a wish list that does not take us anywhere.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Understood. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's someone who is disturbing in the background. I don't know if you are able to mute them, colleague. Thank you.
Yes, Prof. I will disable all mics now. I think there is a hand raised though.
Dr. Goto, go ahead, please. I don't know if Dr. Mabaso. Dr. James, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for a great presentation. I take it that you are referring to a qualitative study. Sometimes when I'm dealing with quantitative studies, if you include secondary questions, you may not cover all the things that you want to cover, because normally if you're using hypotheses, these secondary questions will be covered in the hypothesis section.
Yes.
So I always recommend that we have one, but sometimes I get penalized when it goes to reviewers. They will say you must have secondary question as you must have secondary questions. But it's very difficult to disagree, and sometimes you have to follow what they do. But deep down, you know, there's things are not okay. Okay. Would you like to comment on that? Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Doctor, for that comment. Yes, I think nipped a little bit on the hypothesis, but here is what actually happens. The two mainstream ways of approaching research is from the positivist and the post-positivist. Let me put it that way, or we can say interpretivist. That those approaches, the positivist one actually does not use research questions. It uses hypothesis. You will have your hypothesis, and sometimes your hypothesis 1, 2, 3, depending. And then to offset the criticism over time that qualitative research faced, then it began to say, okay, fine, instead of those hypotheses, we will use research questions. But you find that in the confusion, a lot of people now use research questions, research objectives, and hypotheses. If we are clear about what we are doing, we stick to one and then we are covered. But again, it is the lack of proper training on us, the supervisors, that we don't know these distinctions. And as an examiner, I will tell you something is wrong, but as you are saying, deep down, you know, no, this is not wrong. Actually, it is not supposed to be done this way, but you can see the weakness on the part of the examiner again. A well-trained examiner will be able to even sift through and disaggregate the two approaches to say, no, this one belongs to the positivist, this one belongs to the post-positivist, so that we are covered. The quagmire that I said is a roller coaster. Actually is clearly explained by your question that there's no straight way of doing research. We can never have that because it is always evolving. There are so many debates around it, and it leads us to where I said, in order for you to have conducted a well-researched proposed as a study, dissertation, or thesis, that's where when I was using the idea of building on a swampy area, this is the swamp I was talking about, of navigating spaces that bring a lot of confusion instead of clarity for researchers to complete their studies in a way that they can even defend. It takes steps, methods, processes, techniques that can be defensible. Otherwise, it becomes problematic. Thank you for that beautiful question, Doctor.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you so much, Prof. Max, for your response. I'm looking at our time, and I think I'm ready now to invite Prof. Malindi once again. And then if there's a chance right at the end, we'll then attend to the rest of the questions, if that's okay. Prof. Malindi, are you able to come through now? Prof. Malindi, are you able to come through? Colleagues, I think we...
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you are audible.
Oh, what a relief. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened at that time. I could only see myself, and yeah, it was clear to me that I was not audible at all. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Can
Prof. Glad you came
go
through.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Doctor. I'll try to present my slides now. I'm not sure whether the slides can be seen.
Yes, we can see your slides, Prof. They're not on a presentation mode, though.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you want to change that. There you go.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
thank
Prof.
you so much. Yes, I'm going to proceed from where Prof. Sefoto has ended. The point where I'm going to start, it is after a supervisor-student relationship has developed, and it has, assured the two participants in it that they can actually work together. They can take, as Prof. Sefoto has said, this journey. They can take this journey and go forward. And then because the title then of the study has been agreed upon, and the problem has been identified, and it has already been stated, and the central research question has been decided upon, and the sub-questions that flow from it have already been determined. And then the aim of the study is very clear to the supervisor and the supervisee, and the objectives of the study have been clarified. And in other words, at this point in time, both of them have an idea of where they are going with the study and what they are about. They are going to how the objectives have been clarified. They know what they are going to achieve, and then they have already agreed on the appropriate research paradigm for the study. And then the theoretical framework has been decided upon. In case they are researching something that is still novel, where perhaps a theory is not available, then perhaps they will then have to decide on how they are going to work on developing a theoretical, a conceptual framework that will guide this study. So once the journey has come to be where we are at the moment, then the next step would be to decide on the overall strategy of inquiry. Well, the overall strategy of inquiry is sometimes referred to as the research methodology or the research approach. Now, these three concepts actually, indicate to the reader what type of research was actually undertaken by the supervisee under the guidance of the supervisor. So the overall strategy of inquiry is something that the two must actually agree upon, and it must be something that is appropriate for the phenomenon that is going to be studied, because that is also very important. There shouldn't be a disconnect between the overall strategy of inquiry and actually the design and the methods that they are going to use, which I'm going to talk about at a later stage. So after the overall strategy of inquiry has been agreed, the research methodology and the research approach, then they need to decide on the mode of research, which could be quantitative, qualitative, or mixed methods. I know that there are different classification systems for the modes of research that researchers can choose from. I chose this because they are the ones that we use the most in education and in social sciences. So qualitative, mixed methods. And then what is also very important for supervisors to be aware of is that these modes of research have their own meta language. So In other words, when I read a proposal that is designed or that is developed for a quantitative study, I mustn't see language that pertains when one talks about qualitative research or when one talks about mixed methods or multimodal research. So that is what we as supervisors have to guard against. So in other words, we need to know the language that is used when one is using quantitative research and when one is using qualitative research. So that is why sometimes if we don't do this, then we will find a student who is doing qualitative research talking about validity and reliability, which are concepts that we use in quantitative research. So we don't want them to mix the meta languages. They need to be very clear. They need to be very clear on the overall strategy of inquiry and the mode of research that they want to actually embark upon. So then every study has to have a particular design, a design that is related to the overall strategy of inquiry. That is what we already know as supervisors. So, but now, when I talk to students, especially my honor students, they always laugh when I tell them that the design is so important because it's like the shape or even the clothes that they are wearing, they have been designed so that they can be able to cover the body the way they should. So they always laugh when I liken a research design to the shape or the form that an object takes, because then what is important is that qualitative research, we know, has its own designs. We know that quantitative research has its own designs, and so is multimodal or mixed methods research. They also have their own designs. So if I may just pretend that colleagues don't know what designs belong to qualitative research, I'll just mention them here that as supervisors, we need to be very clear with the students that when they say they want to do phenomenological research, there must then be a phenomenon that they are busy studying. And it must be clear in their minds that the phenomenon that they are studying is actually linked to the subjective meanings which their participants ascribe to the reality that they experience in the research context where they are. So, but now if we are dealing with concepts or phenomena that are relatively new, and perhaps I should use the word very rare, where you don't find many of the participants that experience or have experienced the phenomenon that you are studying, then perhaps you might be forced into conducting case study research. So in other words, what I want to say here is that students must be made aware that case study research is not the research that you undertake simply because you don't want to do large-scale research. It's actually a research that you undertake in order to do an in-depth study of a particular case, which is rare enough, which is rare enough but very important for us to be able to learn from. And my honor students again laugh when I tell them that we knew that a human being has a heart simply because we studied one body of a human being. So we don't have to slaughter every other person we meet so that we can be sure that they all have a heart. So they laugh when I say that, because I say that because I want to demonstrate to them that we need to have a case which is representative enough for us to be able to say we have learned something from the case that we have studied. And I always tell them that case study research requires that you define and describe in detail the case that you are going to study. And it must be unique enough that we cannot actually sit and say, but next door there's another case, next door there's another case, and so on and so on and so on. It should be unique enough and be something that we can learn from, something that can give us in-depth knowledge about the phenomenon that pertains. Now, action research, which is my favorite as well, as we all know, is a collaborative type of research that is done to improve praxis, which is done to bring about social change in other words, you do research with the people, not on the people. This is where you take or you regard the people that you work with as co-researchers. And I know what we struggle with, especially as supervisors and even as researchers when we do action research, is to take a step down from the position that we are in as researchers, because in this case, you are one of the co-researchers with the people that you are working with. So the students must actually be made aware that action research is different in that we don't even we use the word sample. We actually use the word recruitment. You recruit participants who will then become co-researchers with you. So they need to understand that. And what I always see when I read proposals that are based on action research, I sometimes see language that belongs to phenomenological research. So I think that is one thing that as supervisors we need to be very much aware of, because when when a student starts saying, I am going to analyze data using, for example, inductive content analysis, then I become worried, because then it seems the student has actually adopted a higher position again, instead of saying they are going to work together collaboratively in order to process the data, because they are co-researchers in this regard. So that is the little trick. And yes, action research has a lot of genres as well from which the researchers can choose from. So they need to be aware of that as well. And then ethnographic research, for those who are interested in certain communities and looking at the cultures, beliefs, practices, and the interactions and the kind and nature of those interactions in these communities, then ethnographic research would be a research design of choice. And then for those researchers who want to develop theory or who want to test theories, and I know Prof. Photo will be challenged when I say this, because he and I always decry the fact that we don't have context compliant theories that can be used in the African context. So this means therefore that for those researchers who want to develop theory and test other theories in their context, then grounded research, a grounded theory is a choice, it's a design of choice for them. So then narrative research, which is my favorite as well, this is where you analyze people's stories. This is where you analyze people's personal stories in order to be able to learn how they experience reality in their own research contexts. And then in qualitative research, we know that we have a number of methods that you can use in order to generate your data. And I'm deliberately not using the word collect data. So these are some of the most commonly used in social sciences and in education. And I'm not claiming at all that in focus group discussions. We know that interviews can be in one-on-one. We know that they can occur in a group context. Then focus group discussions, and then participant observation, and then document analysis. And then sometimes what we need to be aware of as supervisors is that when a student says, I'm going to do document analysis, they need to be aware that they must add science to their analysis of the document. And document analysis is not just reading the document and then you for example, say, I know what the document says. You need to add science to it by coding it in such a way that you can actually glean themes from what you are reading, from the document that you are reading. And this is especially, this I see more among students who are studying policies, then where usually they don't add science to their study of the policies which they are actually reading. Now, my other favorite is the draw and write technique. Now, there has been, since the year 2006, there's been a call globally, a global call that children should be studied directly, because traditional research has always been that children were studied through adults serving as proxies. And that movement actually labeled that traditional way of doing research an adultist approach, where adults are used to study children more indirectly. So that movement actually produced the technique that I'm talking about now, where the children are given a prompt or a page with an instruction that says, make a drawing of what makes you strong or what made you strong during the COVID-19 pandemic. Then the other instruction would be, then write a paragraph or a narrative in which you describe your drawing. In other words, you don't want to impose your own meaning upon the drawing, and you are asking them to write the narrative as a way of enabling them to start the analysis process for you. So the draw and write and the draw and tell technique is a very interesting and easy to use, very a bit expensive because you have to reproduce the prompts or the drawing briefs, and you have to provide stationery and so on. But it is very, very easy to use, because please remember that drawing and writing are natural activities for children. That is why sometimes when you interview children, you run into trouble, because children are sometimes in different cultures not used to sitting with an adult and having a formal discussion about especially sensitive matters that they have experienced. So when you use the draw and write, the draw and tell technique, you can access those levels that you may not be able to access through focus groups and through interviewing children. So I really do like what the draw and write technique or the draw and tell technique can do for you. And then what is also good about this technique is that if children do have neurological issues where they, for example, cannot read, write, like those with dyslexia, then you can actually vary the technique and say, you make a drawing, but then you tell me what the drawing is about, and then you record them and you transcribe what they have said. Then you are able to obtain that data, which you may not be able to obtain if you use any other method that they may not be able to handle. Then collages were my other favorite. And what I usually do with collages is that I ask them to tell me what the story is about the collage itself. So then I record them, and then I quote the transcript thereafter. Now, my other favorite is photo voice, where you well, in the past when I learned about photo voice, the problem was always having those cameras that are disposable. It was always a struggle obtaining those cameras which you can give to children for them to go and take pictures of what makes them strong or what makes them, resilient in the context where they are. So, but today, almost every child has a cell phone with a camera. So it is easier then to ask them to go and take, for example, pictures of what enables them to cope resiliently or adaptively in their own context. Then those pictures are then going to serve as prompts for a discussion between you and the child. Again, this is a bit child-friendly and less threatening to the child. So in other words, then the discussion that you're going to have on all those pictures that the child is going to take will be recorded and then transcribed and then coded, where you will apply open coding, Excel coding, and develop your themes as you should, according to the methods of processing qualitative data. And then my other favorite is using clay, where you ask a child to make a model of what enables them to cope adaptively. And now I'm using the language that I use because I'm a resilience researcher. So what happened then after a child has made a model, maybe a model of a cross, then you ask the child, you sit and you ask the child to tell you about how a cross enables their resilience in their context. Then they tell you a cross here shows that I resile in the context of risk and adversity because I read the Bible, I go to church, I speak to my pastor or an elder or an adult in the church and all those things. So then you can very easily from that see codes that show you that this child copes resiliently because of religiosity, because of being prayerful, and because of the social support that they obtain from their interactions with the other people. So the model that the child has made becomes a prompt, a very child-friendly, accessible prompt that you can use in order to start a discussion with the child without the child feeling that you are that you are interrogating them. So, and okay, I have seen metaphoric stories being used in qualitative research where children where stories were read to children who were at risk. And this is when so this was in the case when the HIV pandemic was very serious, and children were losing parents and loved ones and so on. So in this study, I saw how metaphoric stories were read to children who were at risk of poor developmental outcomes, and then how those children, how those stories actually transformed those children, and the transformation that occurred from when they were at risk was actually measured, so that we can be able to compare how they were before and how they were thereafter. And I know when I say this, I'm actually challenging the colleagues to think about quasi experiments, which I'm going to mention a little later. And I have seen how videos can be used in qualitative research, and I'm sure that Prof. Dwarka is going to say a lot about the ethics of research, and I believe videos are quite sensitive, especially in research terms. Now, another technique that we learned, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, was how you can develop the questionnaire with open-ended questions and spread it across a large section of the population for them to be able to answer those questions and give them back to you, for you to be able to go to do open coding, Excel coding, and develop themes from. And yeah, that is the method that we developed because we were not in a position to sit with people and have a discussion with, as we all know. So these are some of the methods, and I repeat, some of the methods that I see being used more and more, especially in our case. There are many others, and yeah, these are the ones that I just wanted to flag. Now, the data processing. Well, I mentioned two methods that I see being used a lot, and these are the methods that I also use, and perhaps I am biased, I don't know. Yes, content analysis, which could be inductive or deductive. Now, it is inductive when you allow the themes to emerge from the data itself, and it is, in other words, you don't go into the field. You don't go into the field with a priori codes that you have already developed yourself. And then and as I have said, it can also be deductive. And then thematic analysis, I see a lot of people using Brown and Clark's system of processing qualitative data. It has 6 steps which they always use when they follow this way of processing qualitative data. So students have to be aware that you have a particular, in fact, you have can I say, you have an obligation to add science to everything that you are doing. So they need to have a reference of the system that they are using in order to process the data that they are actually envisaging in their studies. Now, as far as quantitative research, it has already been referred to. So we know that quantitative research can be experimental, and this is when it can be true experiments, or we can have quasi experiments. And what we use a lot is survey research. But then I always tell the students that whatever design that you choose, especially when you do quantitative research, you need to be aware that here you are going to harvest numerical data, and you need to know how you are going to process and present that data in a way that can be consumed by those who are going to read your study. So, however, especially when we talk about experimental research, I have never supervised a study where a true experiment is being conducted, but I always, empower them. I always tell them what it is about, those variables that Professor Ford has referred to, the independent and the dependent variables, and how the impact of one can actually be on the other variable can be measured, all those things. And then quasi experiments, I know I have seen studies, qualitative studies that were conducted where people were doing quasi experiments. In other words, manipulating a variable, especially those who do intervention research. They put children through a program in order to improve their motivation, in order to improve their or enhance their resilience, and then they measure those differences and account for the differences that they see as well. So survey research, well, that one I'm not going to say a lot about, because we all know that we especially when we do survey research, we design that we decide sometimes we design, sometimes we use existing questionnaires. And the blessing that technology has given us is that we can even use technology these days, where we develop a survey and then people complete it online for you, and then you have your data. So that is what I see being done a lot, especially in our field. Now, as I have said, we still have an inheritance from Rensis Likert, who developed the first Likert scale. And then especially in our field, we know that sometimes, especially those who are in the field of psychology, sometimes they use psychometric instruments in order to measure the variable or the phenomenon that they are busy researching as well. So these are the methods, or some of the ways in which data can be generated, especially in quantitative research. Now, data processing, I don't know, maybe I can confidently say that during my time and during Professor Forto's time, handling statistical or numerical data was a nightmare, because we were given formulas. There was one that I always called a scorpion, because it looked like a scorpion, where you have to substitute values into the formula before you proceed to the answer in the end, and a whole page would be full of figures as you proceed. But these days, we have the blessing of technology, where technology has been, is being used a lot in order to process numerical data, which is a good thing at the moment. For some of us, there was an adding machine, formulas that actually gave us a headache. So descriptive stats, inferential stats, that is a decision that students should actually make under the guidance of the supervisor, based on the design, based on the overall strategy of inquiry that they are using. They will decide on what the correct way of presenting the data would be. And then when I was busy with my master's, I was made to learn about mixed methods or multimodal research. And my mini dissertation was based on mixed methods. And in my PhD program, I was also made to use mixed methods, because the resilience phenomenon is better studied through mixed methods. So this was one of my the methods that I used. Now I know that there are differences of opinion on which designs form part of multimodal research. I only took the ones that I know are used more, the words that are used or concepts that are used more frequently, which is convergent, embedded, explanatory, and exploratory. And in parentheses, I have just added a few keywords just to remind us that convergent parallel is where data collection and analysis occur contemporaneously, and that embedded design, qualitative data is actually embedded within quantitative data. So explanatory sequential, which is the one that I used where in my PhD, that is where quantitative data is collected first, and then qualitative data then follows. And then exploratory sequential is an equalizer, because then you start with qualitative data first, and then it's followed by quantitative data. Now, I think there's another one called triangulation, but now it is very important for those students who say they want to do mixed methods research to know which design of mixed methods or multimodal research they are going to use in order to make sure that they can actually come with findings that will actually be believable. And now, what is always said, which is very important for us as supervisors to always remember, is that when a student uses different methods taken from different modes of research, that does not in itself constitute mixed methods research unless or and until a particular a design of mixed methods research has been chosen, and it is clear that this study was deliberately chosen as a mixed methods research study. So in other words, one can use multiple methods without necessarily doing multimodal or mixed methods research. That's what we need to be very, very much aware of. And we must also be aware that qualitative researchers can actually use multiple methods of generating data within a qualitative overall strategy of inquiry. So, which is something that I find being encouraged, especially internationally, that one shouldn't just use one method of generating data. They should actually use multiple methods in order to make sure that the shortfalls of one method can actually be overcome by using another method. And then participant selection. Well, on the left-hand side, one can see that quantitative researchers will use probability sampling methods, some of which are listed, like simple random sampling, cluster sampling, systematic, and stratified random sampling. But on the right-hand side, we can see that qualitative researchers will always use non-probability sampling, and then those are some of the methods that they use: convergent, convenience, judgmental, snowball, and quota sampling. These are the commonly used methods that we see. Now, the reason why I'm putting this here is so that we as supervisors can say to a student who's doing qualitative research, you cannot talk about probability sampling when you are talking about qualitative research. So you cannot talk about random sampling when you are doing qualitative research, so that they know the language that is used in a particular mode of research. And this is my favorite slide. I always enjoy seeing this slide. So this is where I'm going to end. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Prof. Malindi. No, we're not enjoying seeing this slide at all. We were really enjoying the presentation. Right, thank you so much, Prof. Malindi. I see there's a couple of questions for you in the chat box. So as we move on to our final speaker, Prof. Dwarika, may I kindly suggest, Prof. Malindi, that you attend to the questions so that right at the end we are left with a few to attend to. We're just trying to multitask for the sake of time. Is that okay, Prof. Malindi?
It is, and thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much, Prof. Malindi. Our third speaker, colleagues, is Prof. Dwarika, who is going to talk to us about the ethics in research. She will further use UJ as an example to take us through the processes of obtaining ethical clearance. You ready for us, Prof. Dwarika?
Right, thank you so much. Let me put
Thank
my camera
you.
on. You're able to see the slides.
Yes, we
Correct.
are. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Mabaso. We're looking now at ethical considerations in research proposal writing. We want to focus on what are the considerations for the supervisor as well as the supervisee in this process of research writing. We want to look at what training does the supervisor and supervisee need before they do the ethics application, and then how does that training manage itself or present itself in the actual application. We're going to look at a case study and then also look at the ethics review form that the ethics committee uses to review our ethics application. It down. Let's see, we're moving. There we go. So in terms of ethics and why it matters in research, you will be aware of the Tuskegee syphilis experiment happened in 1932 right up to 1972, so spent about 40 years. And it was conducted with over 200 American male participants who had syphilis, and they were treated. They were not given treatment, but the aim of the research was really to determine the extent of the suffering or the pain or how this disease will present itself right up to death and autopsy. And you can imagine the outcry of that research in terms of the impact it had on society, the lack of informed consent, the refusal to provide treatment to people, even though treatment was available, and the impact it had on families. And so, following from that, there was a lot of work done in terms of developing some code of ethics. You will be aware of the APA version 7 in terms of the referencing guide that we encourage our students to use. We also use the APA Code of Ethics within our department for managing ethical dilemmas, not only in the field of psychology, but also in research and in supervision. And some of that we want to look at in terms of how does the supervisor ensure there's no harm to their supervisee? How do you establish trust and your relationship with your supervisee? And what will help you to promote accuracy, honesty, and truthfulness in that process, and to support your dignity and rights as well as that of the student? And then we want to look at how does these 5 also present itself within the research. So far you know that there are some steps, and ideally the student, you only should start supervision with the student once they've confirmed registration with the university. How do you know that they've confirmed their registration? They should send you their proof of registration. And then only can the supervisor-supervisee agreement be entered into. I'm asking our host to just help us to put in the chat the document that we're looking for in terms of the supervisor-supervisee agreement, and you will be able to see that and download it. Please, can you confirm once it is available to the audience?
Hi, Prof. Yes, I've posted the link to the folder where they can download all of the documents.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it is accessible.
Maybe I must stop sharing this one and then open the document on my side. Share my screen. And it is the agreement. There we go. So this is what it looks like, colleagues. Quite comprehensive in terms of the roles and responsibilities of the supervisor and the supervisee, and providing you just some definitions of what that is. And in your case, for our colleagues from Solplakies, you would probably be a co-supervisor joining one of the colleagues as main supervisor from UJ. And ideally, you would be introduced to the student in that very first meeting. So in terms of the benefit to the student and understanding their rights, this document carefully outlines what they can be expected to be doing. What are their responsibilities? How often they need to communicate with you? How they should put together their timeline document? How they should implement various things. They are responsible for finding resources while you will offer support in doing that. And I'm just going to scroll quickly through. How they must submit their work neatly, typed, legible, according to the agreed upon work schedule. Generally, the work schedule here refers to 14 days turnaround working days, so 2 weeks working days turnaround time for feedback. And if the supervisor is not able to do that, they must communicate ahead of time so that students don't feel like they're left in the lurch. And then we want to move to any challenges with them not being able to continue their studies. They should be able to inform you so that you can make arrangements with them. They need to help set up the appointments, so they can email to request appointments with you. You can request appointments with them. This could be Teams, group supervision, face-to-face supervision, depending on whatever works. I want to move then to the 11-page documents, responsibilities of the supervisor. Yeah, right at the bottom of page 5. I'm hoping you're able to access it on your side. Supervisors, what the role of the co-supervisors are, and I think that will be quite important for our colleagues from Solplaikis. How you need to clarify the roles, then ensuring there's a cordial relationship. This document also outlines processes for disputes. So if there is a disagreement between the supervisor and the supervisee, what is needed? How do you manage that? What's the next steps? And I think this would really help students at the beginning of supervision process in terms of understanding the ethics of the supervision process itself. I want to move back to the document here, slideshow. There we go. All right. So we want to look then at the TREE training and what that is. So TREE is really standing for Training and Resources in Research, Ethics and Evaluation. That involves training that is necessary for both the supervisor and the supervisee. So when the ethics application is submitted to the Research Ethics Committee, the student and the supervisor's certificate of completion of the TREE training must accompany the application. What does this look like? There's a website on your screen. You normally just click in there, log in, and the student and the supervisor is really only expected to do module 1. In my practice with the students, I normally encourage them to do module 1, 2, and 3 that focuses on introduction to research ethics, evaluation of ethics in research, and as well as informed consent. Given that we work very closely with vulnerable populations, learners, issues of trauma, resilience, we want to know what that means for informed consent. So you're welcome to play along and see if you can access the website. The link is on the slide. So when they go in, you need to only look at module 1, and you click on there, you'll see that the certificate is not completed, it's grayed out, so you only can access it once it's completed. Follow the prompts, and the certificate you'll see right at the bottom of your screen here. That's what it looks like. You just download that, and that would accompany your the student's ethics application. All right. So in terms of the implications then for the student's ethics application, ethics, as you are well aware, is quite controversial. And our challenge when we're looking at proposals is sometimes the students do not provide enough justification for why they are including certain aspects in the study. So they will say, my sample will comprise of teachers and parents. but not saying what are the inclusion and exclusion criteria for the teachers and parents, or number of years experience in teaching in a certain phase, perhaps. So, for example, if your study title was around trauma-informed strategies that teachers use in special needs schools, you would be more interested in teachers that have a little bit more than 1 year of teaching experience, perhaps, because then you'd have a sense that the teachers are long enough in the school to be aware of learners that may have experienced trauma and have put in some support strategies in place there. So in terms of your justification for your ethics applications, there must be clear explanations as to why this type of participant is relevant for your study. How does it add value for your study? So there must be a clear indication of, okay, this study is necessary because it's going to provide enough information or add to the body of knowledge around support strategies for learners with autism, perhaps in terms of managing disruptions in school. So the scientific or social value must outweigh any of the potential challenges that come with working with the vulnerable population. So you have to be able to solve a problem that is relevant to the community concerns. So generally, students come to us and say, I want to do this because the reasons vary. Sometimes it's really just, I want to get that degree. I want to get doctor behind my name. I want to finish my master's so I can get a better job. And all of those are legitimate. But in terms of the research project, the project itself must be designed in such a way that it is relevant to the community. It ensures that it leaves the community in a better position than what it was. And generally, we want to look at how that could be addressed to help the community. So when the researcher leaves, the community is better off. In terms of voluntary participation, consent, and assent, so of course, those that are able to provide consent at age 18 and above, there generally are no challenges. But when it comes to the minors, they should be given assent. They may not understand fully, but you are responsible to explain why the research is being done and are they willing to participate. Of course, their parents will also have to give consent for the child's participation. We want to look at a case example. And for that, I'm going to stop this one. Whoops. And you should have that case example in your file. There it is. I'm just going to give you a second to pull it up. It is an example of an ethics application. Please just put a thumbs up if you've accessed it. This is what we're looking at now, is the ethics application that goes to the Research Ethics Committee within the Faculty of Education. The committee is not only with members from EdSpsych, but also from all the other 5 departments within the faculty. So any member of the Research Ethics Committee could read the ethics application, and it must make sense for them, even though they feel maybe mathematics or languages. So the writing must be clear in such a way that it makes sense to the reader. So you will see in the first number 1, after the students put in their details, the information provided in the ethics application is accurate, and I understand the principles of conducting ethical research. Now, the ethics committee has put in place the TREE training to ensure that students and supervisors actually can tick this box by completing the training to say, I understand the principles. And that's why that training and certificate is quite important. Yeah. The rest is clear there. Going to move down. All right. Supervisor and supervisee needs to sign. Generally, it must be approved first at department level, whether it's PhD or master's. So master's, it goes to the department proposal review committee together with your completed proposal, the student's proposal. So the committee looks at both the proposal and the ethics application together to see whether this is valid or reliable and it is doable. Yeah. In terms of the PhD, the student would have to present their first seminar to a doctoral committee at a PhD seminar where they are able to defend their proposal and answer questions before it is submitted to faculty higher degrees. Oops, I'm jumping there. Let's move down. That is quite simple. You know the different types of methodology that could be used, and you just need the student just needs to tick whichever box is relevant for them. And then it comes to actually providing the ethics committee with a detailed explanation of why the student is doing the study. Why is it relevant? What is the role of the study in terms of adding to the body of knowledge, giving new information? What is its intention? So all of the proposal that you've gone through so far with Prof. Sofoto and Prof. Malindi provides enough information for the student to formulate the ethics application. So it's a matter of taking some of that information, putting it down into simple language that should anybody read it, they know exactly what's expected. So the student will need to explain it clearly. What is the procedures? How will they ensure informed consent? And this example is a good practice example. It's not the perfect example, but it does highlight some of the key aspects that often trip students up and supervisors up. And this application was one that was approved without major changes within the ethics committee while I was there in 2024, I think it was. Okay. You will see some things absent in terms of interviews will be conducted. They take place at a private setting to ensure confidentiality. What maybe is missing from this section is that it would be at the convenience of the participants. So it seems like it's not necessary to say it, but you have to be very explicit in how the student then writes up there. What type of capturing of data, and the quite important part is the potential risks. So for this application, the student and supervisor indicated that it was both low and medium risk, which is interesting. And they suggested that there was some risk because the management team at the university where this study was taking place could fear that the teachers could fear that actually, our responses could create some criticism. It could impact on how they were reflected on. They were aware of power dynamics. And well done in this application is how the student and supervisor indicated how will they mitigate this risk. They explain that there is a risk, but they're also showing how they're going to manage that to ensure that the ethics is adhered to quite strongly and covering all the aspects. Showing how they're going to frame the questions, how they're going to manage power dynamics, how will they manage privacy issues. They also say there's a risk to the researcher and what that risk is, because here the researcher is also part of the staff at the school and at the university where the study is taking place. And it often happens that our students do their studies within schools that they are teaching in, or part of the governing body, or managers in the team. And that power imbalance in terms of being part of the school team plus being the researcher and writing up the research can create challenges for the student. And then there's an explanation of how that could be managed or mitigated. And this provides strong evidence to the ethics committee that, okay, this person is fully aware of the potential risks. Not only that, they're also able to mitigate or manage those risks. I always encourage the students to look first as in terms of these aspects before they put it in their proposal chapter, so that the proposal chapter encapsulates all of these issues quite clearly and carefully. And sometimes it's just making sure that it's coherent in both spaces. Okay. Important is, what are the benefits? Remember, it has to benefit society, it has to benefit the community, and what could that mean? Jumping, let's go further down. Benefits to the school or the community where it was happening. It's an international school. Benefit to the education sector. So the more in depth you provide the information, the better it is. Voluntary participation, informed consent, relevant gatekeepers, so that could be the school. In this case, it was also the regulatory body governing all the private schools or higher education institutions where this was happening. Quite carefully, how are they going to get the institutional permission? So for your students, possibly it would be the Gauteng Department of Education, where the students are doing their studies and they have to apply to the GDE. There's a special form that needs to be completed, so they will indicate as part of the institutional permissions that that would be a process and it would be followed. Okay, I wanted to take us right to the bottom of this document. So this is the personal information impact of the assessment for research. This has been a recent addition into the ethics committee. And the top part, section 1, is quite easy. Generally, if your student is doing research in section 2, where your response in 2.1 is no, then you do not have to complete the rest of this form, which is about 4 or 5 more pages. I think it goes up to section 13 or 14. So does this research involve processing of personal information? And this applicant said actually no. And you wonder, okay, how do you do that then? And they quite clearly identify or describe how they're going to make sure that there's no personal information going to be divulged, processed within the course of the research. They're saying that the participants will not be asked to provide their names, they're not asked to provide their job titles or the school names or any other identifying data. They're going to remove any indirect identifiers, so they're going to use contextual clues instead of saying specific issues. So they will speak of heads of the school or the curriculum rather than teachers within the foundation phase. So there are ways of managing that process. So because this person said no in section 2, they don't have to answer any of the other questions. If there was a case where you said, yes, you are processing information, then the student will have to answer all of this, yes or no, yes or no, yes or no, right to the bottom. And they will then have to provide a justification for the category of risk. For this example, it was low risk. All of this was not necessary, but if it gives you an idea of the potential length, breadth, and depth of what needs to be covered in an ethics application. Seem to be frozen. There we go. Stop the research. Want to take us right to the bottom. Okay. So remember, both have to sign, and then there is indication of what type of involvement is necessary. And here they're saying no personal information. Otherwise, it could be, yes, there's personal information, but with low risk, or there's personal information with high risk. So really the application is showing you they are all parameters are possible, as long as there is a reasonable justification, an ethical justification, a mitigation of the risks. I'm going to move back to my slides. Okay, I'm aware of the time. So that's the case example we looked at. And in terms of the scientific rigor and validity, I'm going to skip those two and maybe take us through just the ethics review form. That's also in your documents. Let me pull it up on my side. So this is what the committee, the Research Ethics Committee, looks at when they are approving or rejecting the ethics application. Yeah. So first of all, the student will have to click the reviewer, who is part of the ethics committee, and within our department on the ethics committee is Dr. Mabaso, Prof. Malindi, Ms. Athena Clayton. I can't remember who else right now. I think it was yourself as well, Dr. Lucia.
Dr. Mawila.
Dr. Mawila as well. Thank you. It looks at very what we think is superficial, but information style and writing. So the reviewers have to tick the box. If the reviewers indicate something in block, what is this, 1, 2, 3, or 4, then they have to provide some feedback to you and the student on how you can improve your ethics application. So you can see then in terms of your methodology, did you put in enough information and relevance for this research in your background in the study, how it all came together, what instruments are you using, why are you using it, how is it relevant, how is it necessary, is there even the instruments available as annexures in terms of your questionnaires or your protocols that you are going to be using. So all of this, you are hoping you get to be compliant. And if it's not, they would provide you with some feedback. Yeah. In terms of the benefits, how it leaves participants, is the sample large enough? If you are saying you're doing a case study and it's a case of one learner in a public school that is high-functioning autistic learner, it's not a large sample, but it's an appropriate sample because it's going to add and provide a depth of, deep description of how the student is supported within the mainstream, perhaps. Right. And then this part in terms of vulnerable populations, if there are vulnerable participants, and often that is the case, you just need to be able to ensure that your ethics application indicate there's no exploitation, you justify clearly why they need to be there, and why there's no other option for the vulnerable population to be part of the study. For example, I had one PhD student who is doing therapy practices, experiences of LGBTQ plus communities in therapy practices within the Zimbabwe, Harare. And then, the population is vulnerable because in Harare, Zimbabwe, there are challenges with acceptance of the LGBTQ plus community. And I had to, with the student, begin to say how we're going to ensure that there's no identification of this sample, that the authorities will not by any way know where the sample of participants came from. How would you protect them in terms of additional support services? We're looking at this aspect here. Research is just what type of ancillary caregiving support is available for the participants to ensure that when there's a need, there is something available for them. That could be an organization, an individual psychologist, and the researcher, the supervisor and the researcher will need to give a letter from the person offering the ancillary care to confirm that they are available free of charge to support the participants. And generally, the reviewers will identify in terms of the risk factor, and they will make a decision in terms of, is it approved? Is it approved with minor revisions? Is it major revisions and resubmission required? We are hoping for our students and yourselves that it's either one of these two. Generally, with major revisions and resubmissions, it can be submitted within a week back to the committee, and it only goes to the reviewers that looked at it, and they can make a decision and then return to you. The process from submission to approval or decision, I think, takes within a month of the committee meeting. Good. I'm going to go back to this one. I see we have 5 minutes left, and that's good timing. Thank you, Dr. Mabaso.
Thank you so much, Prof. Dwarika, for yet another insightful presentation. I see we needed more time. I think we needed like 4 hours or so. So as we draw today's session to a close, I would like to invite Prof. Tumidiale, the Dean in the Faculty of Education at Sol Plaatje University, just to share a word or two on how this collaboration baby came about. I know she was here, but she needed to jump to another meeting. Prof. Tumidiale, are you here?
I'm here, but I see my camera is disabled from my side. I don't know if anybody from your side can enable it.
Dr. Lorenzo, are you able to assist, please?
Yes, I will just, yes, Dr. Miss. Apologies for the delay. There seems to be, the system is just freezing. I'll just be
As we wait for Dr. Lorenzo to set us up, colleagues, thank you so much for the activity that I saw in the chat box. I really do believe that we needed more time, but I'm glad that some of your questions have been attended to. Yeah. And I think we really need to continue with this discussion outside and beyond the bounds of this webinar today. Are we winning, Dr. Lorenzo?
Yeah,
yes, I think
activated.
so.
Okay, perfect. Great. Over to you, Prof. Tumi.
Okay. At least, am I visible?
Yes, we can see you. We can see you, Prof. Tumi. Please go ahead.
Am I still beautiful and smart as I
Yes.
left UJ? Okay, I just wanted to make sure if I still look as beautiful as when I left UJ. So, thank you. Thank you, colleagues, and good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon to the colleagues at SPU. Good afternoon to my homies from UJ. Let me start first, before I do my thanks, let me just give a brief overview of how the collaboration came about. My SPU colleagues know that I come from UJ, from the Faculty of Education. So when I joined SPU, one of the key challenges was the fact that we do not offer a PhD as yet as a university. And on the one hand, we don't offer a PhD as a university, but on the other hand, one of the key criterion for promotions within the university to the different levels is the completion of a PhD studies supervision to completion. So based on that, then I started engaging with my homies, including the Dean of the Faculty of Education at SPU, at UJ, but in particular, in depth, I engaged with my educational psychology colleagues, which was my home department when I was at UJ. And my request was purely to allow us, or to be able to move in. I was a bit slow from my side. We're supposed to have started this year already, but I was slow from my side. But at this stage, it's allowing us to have moving to 2026 to have some of our colleagues who are willing, of course, to co-supervise with our UJ colleagues for them to build a profile for their own careers. And that request was made to the Dean of the Faculty of Education, who really embraced it. And we have more than one project per se at this current moment that we are collaborating with UJ, with the dean. And I also then spoke to my colleagues in the Department of Ed Psych, Prof. Dwarika and Prof. Sefoto, which is what culminated into this workshop today, which focused on saying, much as we know that we have our master's program here at SPU, which has the same processes that we need to follow, like any other higher education institution. But it was important for us to have a workshop with UJ, so when people decide that they are available and they are willing to grow their profiles and to co-supervise with the University of Johannesburg, in particular at this stage, the Department of Educational Psychology, they are able to understand what processes and procedures does the University of Johannesburg follow and what is expected of them from those processes. So this is what has led to this particular workshop today. And I then also, Dr. Mabaso, through you, as I said, I thought as SPU, we've been talking since we are expecting our PhDs. We've been talking about supervisory capacity building and all that. I then extended actually the invitation to other deans to can give to their staff members. So I see we have some of the staff members here who are from other faculties, not necessarily the Faculty of Education, but I hope they have gained a lot from this particular workshop in terms of supervision. But also I see I've got a lot of my own faculty members. I need to apologize that other faculty members who could not attend, it's because of class or teaching responsibilities that we all know that take priority. So I want to believe that, Dr. Mabaso, through you, we can be able to get the recording of this workshop for our people to be able to deal with, or to go through the workshop and to go through the different aspects, and then they can make a link. So in terms of moving forward, then the moving forward part is that we will then, between myself, I will not actually meet, but I will introduce to you, Dr. Mabaso, Dr. Grunewald, and Professor, I saw Prof. Hlalele is here. I know Dr. Grunewald had other commitments, but I saw Prof. Hlalele was here. Prof. Hlalele is our chairperson for our faculty postgraduate committee, which in UJ side is the Faculty Higher Degrees Committee. And then Dr. Grunewald is our chairperson for our faculty research committee, which is an equivalent of your faculty research ethics committee. I will link them with you colleagues so that taking further, we can take it from there, even if I'm not actively involved. But we will, from our side, begin then to gather data on who are interested in supervision and what are their fields that they work on, and we can build on this collaboration further. I know in the meeting here, I've got colleagues, Dr. Mabaso, from other departments in the faculty. And because we had also engaged at the dinner level with Prof. Peterson. I will, when other people come up in terms of topics or studies that do not necessarily talk to what we do in ed-psych, inclusive education, and learner support, but have to do with languages, with science, or with social sciences, then we will link them directly with the people at UJ in those departments. So we basically, that's where the collaboration came from. And that's where we are, as I reported, that we have even other projects at this stage that we are collaborating on with with the Faculty of Education as a whole at UJ. So we are grateful. In conclusion, let me thank Dr. Mabaso for organizing this particular workshop for us to engage. But let me also thank Professor Dwarika as the head of department in ed-psych for really pushing that we should have this after I spoke to you. You really did your best on your side to ensure that this takes place. And also Professor Sefoto, who is also collaborating with us in other things, but also for UJ people who would know, he's my particular partner in crime in terms of research. So I'm really grateful for all of you and for RCD to organize this on our behalf. We really are pleased to have that. Just on this particular aspect, Dr. Mabaso, I read something that had to do with RCD. So I just wanted to check, are we going to be getting the presentation and other things that might have to do with, or that something that was going to be put on Moodle, but because we are not on your Moodle, will we be able to receive it on our site? Can it be sent to me so that I can share with colleagues?
Hi, Prof. Diale. I can step in here. Yes, we will. Once the recording has been uploaded, then I will send the link with the presentation slides and all materials to you, and you'll be able to disseminate that to your team.
Okay, thank you so much. And colleagues, please note that UJ has put a link for us to do an evaluation. Am I correct, Dr. Mabaso?
Yes, you are correct.
There's a survey. Please let us ensure that we complete the survey for the workshop. But thank you so much, colleagues. This has been very, very helpful and fruitful for us. I appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Mabaso.
Thank you so much, colleagues. I'm so sorry about the background noise. We have moved into another meeting with the Dean. So thank you so much once again, colleagues, and thank you, Prof. Dumi, so much for giving us that background information. Again, thank you, colleagues, for your patience. We are 7 minutes into your personal time. I think I need to encourage us all to continue with this conversation beyond today, to reach out, collaborate, and share, because the strength of our scholarship lies in the network we build on the wisdom that we exchange. So until we meet again, please keep safe, keep inspired, and keep guiding research with excellence. Thank you so much. I'm handing over to Mr. Nkosi, and I will be silent until the end of the meeting. Over to you, Mr. Nkosi, our moderator. Mr.
Hi, Dr. Mabaso.
Thank you.
Dr. Mabaso, yes. So colleagues, we'd like to thank you once again for attending the session. We'd also like to extend our thanks to our colleagues at Salt Lake University for attending, our facilitators for putting together this fantastic presentations, as well as Dr. Mabaso for coordinating this. We really appreciate it. Can I just please request before I let you go, there has been, as Prof. Diale has advised, there is a feedback survey that's been posted in the chat. Please may I ask that you take the 2 minutes and just fill out the feedback survey, and it just allows us to see how we can improve offerings moving forward. But with that, I would just like to thank everyone once again and wish you all a safe and a wonderful afternoon, and we hope to see you at future events. Thank you very much.